All right, hey, welcome everybody. I appreciate you being here. I wanted to take and maybe interview some of the best REO agents in the country. And when I say that, I'm not exaggerating. You know, if you've attended one of our lunch and learns, you've seen all their credentials. They've sold more than 10,000 properties, REO properties collectively. They've done tens of thousands of BPO for different servicers. They've trained thousands and thousands of real estate agents across the U.S. and Canada on REO, on BPO. These are the smartest six guys in REO on the planet. That's not hype and that's not exaggeration. And so we get a lot of questions all the time that are fairly simple to answer. And I thought what we would do is put a video together and let's ask them these questions live. These are the things that we get the most frequently asked questions after we do a training class or we do a lunch and learn, whatever it is. So we thought we'd collectively just get everybody on one call, knock it out at one time, give you answers to the most frequently asked questions we get. And so with that, I think what we'll do is we'll start in the upper left-hand corner. Larry, the big one is, what are the qualifications an agent needs to be an REO agent?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one that we probably get a lot. And I will tell you, a lot of the REO business is built around relationships. And so people are always reaching out to REO companies, begging for things from them. I can tell you a lot of the agents that are willing out and willing to give, then they will receive at the end of the day. So my teams, my groups will do BPOs, we'll do property checks, we'll do things for free in order to start building relationships, similar to regular business, right? People do business with others that they know, like, and trust. So that is kind of the first part. The second part is that every bank is a little bit different. Some require you to have experience with selling default properties in the past. Some require experience for default, and this is where it pays to kind of know who you're talking to and what they're looking for in their agent at the end of the day so that you can really go out there and fit their needs. Any agent can go and apply for these companies at this point in time. And so we have a list of 30, 40 different companies that every agent that comes on with us goes and applies for. But then knowing what each of those clients wants at the end of the day is really important to be able to further that relationship. Does that make sense, Bob?
It does. How important do you think it is to have a track record where, hey, a brand new agent out of real estate school, REO companies aren't going to hire them, are they, without having some kind of background, mentors?
No, and that's where a lot of us on the phone, we've either worked together at different REO companies, asset management companies, they've been clients and vice versa at all of these different companies. And this is where if a newer agent is looking, I would say, partner with somebody that already has their foot in the door, right? Learn how to do the BPOs, learn how to expense, turn on utilities, do the expenses, because it's a different game. It's a big tasking game when we get into REOs that a lot of people are unaware of. And so all of these folks, on our panel here have a ton of experience. And when you come on, you start gaining that experience, start building your resume and start aligning yourself. And I know a lot of us, we kind of share the love, right? Like once we know that you're good to go, we'll open up your own accounts and stuff for them at the end of the day as well, because we can't take everything ourselves.
Yeah, full disclosure, guys, everybody on this screen are coaches and mentors for our real estate team. We all do work together because it's imperative. I don't have personally the real estate or the REO experience that all of these guys have, and that's why I wanted them on. They're the pros at it. So, Jeff, why is it so, it's very difficult to learn the REO business. Why is that? You got to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah, the reason it's difficult is, well, one of the biggest things is, and I think it might be another question we're going to answer in this that I saw, but one of the difficult things is when you're someone like myself that's carrying assets from 10, 15, 20 different asset management companies, institutional banks, they all have their own way of doing business. So there's really no one and the same, which makes it really difficult for even an REO broker with 22 years of experience to keep that straight. So I've literally got manuals on, like SOP manuals, standard operating procedure for these different asset management companies. So once you get into REO and you know it, that's difficult. And you really need somebody that's going to help mentor you and help train you through all that, because, fortunately for me, I had NRBA. I'm a member of NRBA, and they've helped me tremendously in my REO experience throughout these 22 years. But Bob, I think your question probably was more to like a new agent. And for a new agent, it's a lot different than the retail world. It's very task driven. You've got a lot of tasks that you've got to complete, and on time is late. So you've got to be on time. There's no messing around with that. There's a scorecard. Again, that's something else we'll talk about later. But there's just a lot of things that are different with an REO, because you're dealing with an institution versus dealing with a person. You're dealing with people's, instead of emotions, you're dealing with people that are thinking, gosh, I can't think of what the word is, but they're very analytical. That's what I'm thinking. Analytical. So with that being said, there is one advantage to REOs that I can tell you, and that is you don't work weekends.
So how many mistakes does an agent get with an asset manager?
Zero. First one, you're out. And when I say that, I mean you make a mistake and they're liable to take that property and reassign it right away. No questions asked.
No matter how long you've been working on it.
Exactly.
No matter how long you've had a relationship with them too.
No matter how long you've been working for that company. I can tell you that I know somebody, I won't mention names, but from a very reputable asset management company in Texas. And I know that this gentleman, if you cross him or do something wrong, he doesn't care if he's known you 22 years like myself. He will take that asset and reassign
it. And it's pretty safe to say, because REOs, there's a finite number of listings, right? So how helpful are other agents to be able to take and teach you that and say, oh, be careful of him because he's like that, or be careful of her and she does that. Like, how does somebody learn that? I mean, they have to have mentors, right?
Honestly, it's like I said, if I didn't have a mentor helping me with REO, I would never have gotten to where I am today. So, and then unfortunately, just like in the retail world with agents, there's not a lot of agents that are going to help you soup to nuts with that business. It's kind of like you got to figure it out on your own. And if you're lucky or good, or have a great mentor like I did in the business, you'll survive and you'll get through it. But if you don't have that person to guide you through, then it's
tough.
Yeah.
So let's go to BPO. So let's go to the master. Robert actually created a whole training class for certification years ago for Fannie and Freddie on how to do the perfect BPO. And Robert, how did they start doing it? Because, well, there's no same thing. There's no standard template, right? There's Fannie and Freddie does it one way, and then all these different asset managers do it differently. How does somebody start that?
Well, the first thing, Bob, is you need to go to all the different companies that are doing BPOs. There's a lot of BPO mills out there. That's all they put out is BPOs. So my personal suggestion for somebody just getting into the business is, like Jeff mentioned earlier, we have a list of about 30 deep right now that are doing BPOs. They also do REOs, but some of them are just BPO companies. What you want to do is you want to learn how to do the BPO. You want to learn what these asset managers are looking for. You're doing nothing more than what you currently do in this regular real estate business. You're evaluating a property. Each bank or each BPO company in this instance sends you an assignment. They want you to do a drive-by usually, or sometimes an interior. But what they'll do is they'll send you their guidelines, what pictures they want, what descriptions they want, what forms they want it on, and they want to tell you when they need it back by. And when, like what Jeff said earlier, on time is late. So you need to make sure that you follow each guideline you're given is specific to that request in that bank. So you just got to become a quasi appraiser. You need to be educated on your market, and you need to explain what the cost is for that property for that client.
So it's pretty safe to say, as it relates to REO, that if you're in the REO business, you actually have a boss, right? Because if they want a BPO, let's say, 3:00 this afternoon, and it's 2 hours away, and you want to keep that relationship, you're going to go do that BPO, aren't you?
Absolutely. And another thing, Bob, is this is your resume. Sure, you're going to have your REO resume that has REO specific tasks that you've created, transactions you've closed, But the BPO is a way for the REO, the asset manager, to look at you and go, wait a second, you've done a really good explanation. Your property value was spot on. Everything made sense. It was clear, precise, detailed, on time. That is what the REO asset managers look at and say, that's the guy I'm using because I can count on that person to give me the true value.
Right. So, Jerry, let's move to Jerry. Jerry was a California broker for the third largest REO servicer in the United States at one point. And so he's taught, supervised, dealt with all the nonsense. Do BPOs ever get rejected by a vendor, Jerry?
Yeah, BPOs definitely get rejected. And I'd have to tell you though, the first moment that you get an REO assignment, within those hours and within those first 48 hours is crucial, very, very crucial. There's certain tasks and certain little things that you have to stay on top of that first 24 hours to make a really good impression. So I've walked hundreds of agents through that first 24 to 40 hour process.
Okay. And so, James, because you've done, hundreds or thousands of these BPOs. Like, how do you get all the different formats down? Because they all have different forms. They all have a little bit. At the end of the day, it's fairly similar, but they all have different needs and wants. And again, how many times you get to screw up a BPO?
You don't.
No.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, you're constantly auditioning is really how I look at it. I mean, you're constantly having to prove your worth to that bank and prove your worth to the client. So in regards to the different formats, I mean, typically, they'll send you the forms that they want them on, as Robert mentioned. But you really have to understand, what they're looking for as far as that BPO, whether it be, an interior or an exterior inspection. And they'll kind of send you those requirements. But yeah, I mean, I would say, like I started with, you're constantly on stage and auditioning to keep that role with that bank.
So what happens, let's say I get the thing and I don't understand it. Do I get to call the asset manager and say, hey, dude, I don't understand this?
No, not at all. No. We'd be talking to each other. I mean, that's why it's great to have resources and people in place that you can communicate with and share information, because that's really the only resource that we have is with, collective agents that are in the same process.
The old slogan that says there's never a dumb question does not apply to REOs and asset managers. There are dumb questions, and you will be penalized for them.
100%, Larry.
100%.
So, all right, so here's the big one. So it's 2:00 in the afternoon. They want one out in Queen Creek, an hour and a half from me, and they want it by 5:00. I don't get to turn it down if I want REO, number one, right? And then, Joseph, how long do the things take? Forget the driving time, right? How long does it actually take to put all the data together? Because really, a BPO, guys, is a abbreviated version, not really that abbreviated of an appraisal, right?
Is an abbreviated version, but not much of an abbreviation. So really that time frame is going to be dependent on the agent and their skill sets and their understanding of what the asset manager is looking for. So the truth is, if you're really efficient in your ability to go out there and collect the data and gather your BPO, you could probably knock it out within an hour. And that's, literally arriving at the property, not counting driving time, but taking all the proper photos the first time you go out, making sure you're at the property, looking at the information that you need to internalize, running your comparables, and in a very efficient manner, because an hour is quick, going through the data you can leverage as far as comparables are concerned and get them into the format that they're looking for. Now, I think the real difference maker from agents who do a bunch of BPOs for free and never get anything versus someone who's going to be in a position to actually start getting assets, how do you know how to be the eyes and ears of an asset manager, answer questions that they don't even know to ask in the form of a BPO? And when you have that ability, now you're really proving yourself. That's when you're on stage like a drummer like James, just putting together melodies that are absolutely incredible, because they don't know what to ask for in your market. They don't know certain things about the property that they should know. Therefore, they don't know how to ask that question. But when you know how to answer questions for them that they didn't even know how to ask, now you're really positioning yourself to get that asset, prove yourself in front of them. But if an agent doesn't know how to go out there and be efficient with a BPO, Ooh, that thing could take them 3 and 4 hours plus.
And if you get 4 or 5 in a day, you're in for a long day, right?
That's right. And hey, that could be a very good test of an asset manager as well. If they inundate you with stuff that is, trying to figure out how efficient you are, that's a really important thing. So they may flood you a little bit just to see how you perform. And if you start to cut corners on effectiveness in effort to be efficient, that's a no-no. You can't let that happen.
Because you get to make how many mistakes again? If there's one thing we want you to get out of this, folks, you don't get to make a mistake. If you do, it can cost you, heaven knows how many assets or any of that. So
I'm sure Bob will get to this part of the question and answer, but one other thing I'll mention when it comes to being efficient with BPOs and tasks in general, your ability to be amazing at performing for the asset manager and the disposition of that REO asset is a whole other story when it comes to your ability to maintain your ability to be a good real estate professional and grow your production while still maintaining that level of performance for the REO company.
And we went into that in a pretty good amount of detail at the Lunch and Learn. So hopefully you guys have attended one of those. If not, you can always shoot us an email and, make sure that you get on a schedule for that. But here's what the dirty little secret that I think most agents don't know about REO. Well, you have to fund the upfront cost. So Larry, you actually were, an executive for same company as Jerry, right? So third largest REO servicer in the United States. What do you think the average expense that the real estate agent bears, not the REO, the asset company, the agent bears? What do you think the average is? And I know that, depends on property, but.
So average is a hard word because, again, every asset management company is different. There are some that I prefer because they put the utilities and expenses in their name. I would say they are the exception and not the rule at the end of the day. And when I had my personal team before I started managing, 2,000 plus assets at a time across the country, and I had my team in Arizona, there was times where I had $48,000, $53,000 waiting to be reimbursed. So, because when you're carrying 100 properties and you have to turn on water, you have to turn on electric, they require deposits for every property. Then you're paying those bills. And now you have to replaster a pool or get it ready to sell. Like every house is so different. So I don't know if there's an average. It depends on the company, if they're selling as is, if they're winterized. But I can tell you that you are responsible for rekeying, utilities, any expenses and stuff that go through there. And they expect you to be able to front that and wait 45 to 90 days to get reimbursed that money.
So hopefully as you're watching this, you were at our Lunch and Learn where we went through our solution for your cash flow. Because listen, guys, for every agent, I don't care how big or how successful an agent you are, carrying, let's say you had 20 listings and Jeff said his average is about 3,000. Well, you're carrying $60,000 for, call it 60 to 90 days. How do you handle that? And so in the Lunch and Learn, we went through that and what our solution is so that it doesn't have to come from your own pocket. And this is the thing that honestly, as people talk about REO, I find this is the thing they never disclose to the agents. And so now somebody goes out and tries to get an REO asset and they're going, okay, well, good, turn utilities on. Go make them a cash for keys offer, and we'll authorize up to $1,000. Well, you just need to know that $1,000 is coming out of your pocket, and you're not going to get reimbursed for probably 60 days. And again, when you go to reimburse, how many mistakes do you get to make on that one?
0.
Or what happens?
You don't get reimbursed.
So that's why this is so critical, folks, to have a team around you that has this experience to do that. Because Jerry, in your career, how many of those disbursements have you had to look at over the years?
Thousands, and if you don't input them correctly with the proper time frames, the way they want you to do it, you're not going to get reimbursed, and you're going to be out that money. And Jeff is a witness right here. Go ahead, Jeff.
I personally was out close to $5,000 because I did not send it in on time. It was right. It was perfect. But the property closed over a month ago, and they only give you about 15 to 30 days depending on the asset management company.
So it's safe to say, guys, that the way that you learned this stuff over the years is by experience, and that was a $5,000 learning lesson for Jeff, right? So Robert, everybody says, hey, I want to get into the REO business, and they get, fast, easy, quick money. But how is it different managing an REO versus just a traditional listing?
Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot more moving parts. You've got your occupancy checks, you've got your rekey, you've got your vendors for you're organizing your vendors, you're organizing your, everything. There's so many moving parts. It's so much different than it is a regular sale. All these guys on the call can first thing you're doing is you're checking to see if somebody's there. Then you're posting the property. If it's occupied, if it is occupied, you need to negotiate a cash for keys based on what the bank's telling you they're offering. If it's vacant, you need to secure it right away, notify the bank, and start your BPO. And it just all depends. And if it's, in your opinion, if it's best to rehab that property, will you get the highest and best price in the shortest amount of time comes into play. So you really need to pay attention. So if it's occupied, you go down one path. If it's vacant, you go down, you start it and get it going right away.
And that vendor is relying on you to be the eyes and ears and the market expert, right? They could be on the other side of the country.
Yep.
And you're their expert. So what you tell them needs to be correct. So if you say, hey, we need to spend X dollars in repairs and we'll be able to sell it for this, and you don't get that, they don't like that very much, do they?
You're basically handling the property from cradle to grave.
Right.
As soon as they offer you the assignment and it's occupied, you literally handle it all the way done, until the very last step of the process. So there's a lot of touches, and you need to do weekly inspections of the property. You need to do weekly reports. Like Freddie, for instance, you got to go into Home Steps and do your weekly report, your weekly inspection. You literally need to make sure that all the doors and windows are secured. There's a checklist that you need to do each and every single week to that property.
In that first 24 hours is probably most critical from the time they assign it to you, right? That, hey, here's this whole list. In that first 24 hours, it's a big list. Same thing. You better get it done. You better get it done right, and you better get it done quick, right?
Correct.
Where, regular listing, hey, you put the sign out, you order the sign, you order this, you're not under that kind of pressure. The way that I would like it is, tell me if you guys agree, it'd almost be like you're managing your own fix and flip, except it's not yours.
Yeah, exactly right.
And you don't make as much money from it either.
100%, yeah.
Right, so it's you have to have that level of involvement in it versus, it's just, hey, it's a regular listing, right?
And Bob, the same thing is is just like it is if you, like you mentioned, if it's your listing, you want to get it in, you want to get it out, you want to get it started on the right path as soon as possible, because that holding time is what the bank's really looking at.
Right. So, Jared, this is where you came in because, you were a broker, and I forget how many agents. How many agents did you guys have at one time? A couple thousand?
Yeah, across, 3.
Oh, okay, so Larry's saying 3. So Larry and Jared work the same company. So here's the thing. So you get a brand new agent, comes out of real estate school, not really likely to get that experience, are they?
No, they're just not, because those relationships that we all talk about with the asset manager are really, really important. In fact, I made sure most of the agents communicating with the asset manager, I made sure they ran the questions by me, right? You just really want to make sure that you're asking the right questions and answering the right questions, and you're just not going to get that with a brand new agent.
So if you're an agent, even if you're not new to real estate, but you haven't done REO, the question you have to ask yourself is, how much experience does my broker have? Like, who am I going to go ask these questions to?
Good point.
To get this figured out. And then the other thing you need to realize, folks, and again, this is that kind of that dirty little secret of REO. Most agents aren't very motivated to help you, right? There's a finite number of listings in BPOs. What financial benefit does an agent in your office, even if they're a very successful REO agent, do you think they're going to hand you a list of all the companies that they work with, and here's all the asset managers, and, oh yeah, tell them I told you to call? Guys, it doesn't work like that. They're very, very protective of that. So a new agent, I know, Jared, we've talked about it before, but kind of the best way for somebody to break into it is really to learn how maybe the back end functions of it all, right? Yeah. Before they start going out and trying to establish relationships, because if you don't know their paperwork, if you're not familiar with Equator and all those different systems, you're going to flunk the test real quick as an asset manager starts to talk to you.
Yeah, sort of like, so imagine this. Imagine you're running out right now to take a personal listing, non-REO, say in Ontario where I live. And on your way down there, you get an REO assignment, right? And that in the messages, they want that BP, they want the inspection done within 3 hours, let's just say.
Right.
And if in your mind you're not trying to figure it out how to get that done and this done in status and impress the asset manager, it's gonna be hard for you to survive as an REO agent.
Yeah. Now the good news right now, folks, there's not millions like '08 of REO coming out. So the truth is you're probably not going to experience maybe quite like that now. The truth is 3 months or 6 months from now, I don't know that we'll be able to say the same thing. That I think you're going to see a pretty big spike in that. So James, like, is there special kind of insurance they need as an agent? Is there different kind of E&Os? Do they need personal insurance? Like if something happens to them and they got sued?
Yeah, you definitely need additional coverage, and again, that's some of the requirements that you'll need to define with the asset companies. What requirements? I mean, typically that's going to be in the application process of what the requirements are there. So yeah, each company can be different, but yeah, you need personal coverage on your vehicle, extended coverage on that, and additional coverage for, based on the asset company.
And is it safe to say, let's say there was mold in the house and you didn't catch it. The asset company is not going to sit there and go, hey, James, it's okay, we got your back, right?
Yeah, no, they're not going to do that.
So,
I mean, it's essentially, just imagine taking on, you have a traditional sale, but you now have to clean and prep the house for those sellers, do all the maintenance and all that while you're, in the sales process. That's essentially what it is like working for the bank. You take a listing and you're managing that property from start to finish.
Yeah, Jeff, I see your hand.
Two things on that I want to add is a lot of brokerages don't carry the that's required of an REO asset company. They're looking for $2 million. A lot of brokerages only carry $1 million. It's much more expensive to carry $2 million. So getting your broker or brokerage to do that may be something that is going to be an impossibility for some people. The other thing I wanted to mention is, Bob said, the asset company or the bank, I'm not going to tell you which one it was in my experience of 22 years, but I got left out to hang on a trash out. The bank had a property trashed out, authorized me to have it trashed out. Well, we got sued. I got sued. The bank got sued. The trash out guy got sued. Everybody got sued. Do you know who paid for my attorney? Yours truly.
Yep.
I paid for every cent of it, and it wasn't cheap. So yeah, so I don't want to scare anybody from getting the REO, but you've got 6, 7 of the brightest REO brokers in this call right now to help you through this and guide you so that you don't make the same mistakes. Because I've failed forward as have, I'm sure, all of you.
So is it 22 years experience and $22,000 in errors, or 220,000 in errors?
Something like that. But the volume that I did, I made millions of dollars doing REOs.
Right.
I don't regret it one bit. And I'm telling you, they are coming back. Before COVID-19 hit, they were coming back, but with COVID-19, they are coming back in a very large volume. It's not pretty, and I'm not happy about it. But if someone's going to have to do this for the banks, it might as well be us and anybody that wants us to help them.
And folks, let's just give you full disclosure up front. One of the reasons we're doing this and we're on a crusade to teach and educate agents about this, we're looking to add agents to our team across the country, because pretty much every day you guys get calls from asset managers saying, hey, do you know somebody in Virginia that knows how to do REO? And so we think it's important that we'll cover these topics with you, because the reality of it is nobody will ever tell you about, oh, you got to front this up front, or that you have liability, or you didn't have the right E&O insurance. And so while we're joking at Jeff's expense, because guess what, guys, we've all done it. That's how we learn. But you're going to need somebody to have your back like that to be able to teach you how to do this and how to avoid these pitfalls. Your number one question should be is, hey, who's my backstop? Is it your broker? I don't know. You need to go interview the broker and find out. What do they know? If you got other agents in your company that do REO, go try and interview them. I will tell you, you probably aren't going to get much information because they're not giving up their resources, right? So, Joseph, why don't you tell them all what an REO scorecard is? Because this is another thing that people never talk about when you hear about REO.
So the scorecard is essentially what an asset management company or institution will monitor in terms of your performance. The difference between a scorecard and like how agents traditionally sell themselves like any other seller is that most agents just go and talk about all their marketing and how great they're going to be and everything's going to work out just fine. Unfortunately, a scorecard doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to quote unquote sell yourself. Your actions sell you. So how quickly did you reply to emails? How quickly did you get tasking done? How accurate were your tasks completed? What is your effectiveness of trying to identify if the property is vacant or not the first time you go out there? All that efficiency is so massively important that everything's measured. So your scorecard is essentially the understanding of what your real performance looks like. So again, most agents don't understand that when you're dealing with an asset management company, you're treated a little bit more like an employee, where these expectations are, I gave you a time frame, you need to hit that time frame. There is no, a new listing came up, so I had to meander and do something different. There's no room for that. And your performance is very highly monitored and tracked. So you do one little mistake, you're not going to be able to go and have a conversation to get that eliminated from your scorecard. That will stay with you.
And the other thing I think that's important to understand, guys, it's not just you, right, that they'll let you go and stop giving you assets. That asset manager also has a score to his boss or bosses. And guess what? They can be replaced. They can lose the number of assets. Oh, they can lose their job because they don't have the right REO score. So one of the reasons that they can be, relatively, what would be the aggressive with you would be a good way of saying it, is that their butt's on the line, right? They get bonuses based on hitting deadlines, based on selling it for the right price, based on how fast it turns around. So they get paid that way. And the truth is, if they don't have a high enough scorecard, I promise they won't be an asset manager for long. And so you have to understand sometimes when they're being aggressive, they may be taking it on you because the phone call before was an agent who isn't doing their stuff right. But it's not easy to balance that all the time, is it? Because they can be harsh.
Everything is tracked and measured, right? Everything is tracked and measured on the default side of things. And everybody is applying for these scorecards, and they want the highest scorecards because that's what gets them the most compensation, gets them more deals, and keeps the process moving, which is why we were able to carry over 2,500 at a time, because we had the systems in place, we knew the scorecards, and we were just diligent about them to not just meet, but exceed our clients' demands at the end of the day.
And that's a huge deal. So you have to understand that, guys.
These asset managers are carrying, I was talking to an asset manager of mine this week, and it's one of my properties got transferred to a different asset manager because my asset manager got furloughed. Well, I asked this asset manager, I said, how many files did you have before the furlough? 110, Jeff. Well, 110 files for one asset manager. I thought that was a lot. Then I said, well, how many do you have now? She says, I've got over 200. Wow. So they've got a lot going on, and what they want, and I think I heard someone say this earlier, is when you've got a problem or a challenge with a property, they want you to come with a solution, not with a question. So like Jerry, it was Jerry. It's if you got a challenge, well, tell me what are the 2 or 3 things that you would do, Jeff, to resolve it. Give them that. That way they can just go, I pick A, B, or C. If you come to them with, I just got a problem, oh my God, what do I do? It's probably your last asset.
And you don't get to send them emails and call them 3 or 4 times a day to ask questions either, because, well, imagine if you had 200 assets and you had 200 different agents and every one of them asked you a question a day. What would that be like?
Yeah, and they don't communicate via phone much at all.
No.
I've got some asset managers who I've never talked to in my life, and that's just the way they do business. And that, quite frankly, when I was carrying 200 listings, that's how my office was. We talked through email and text, mostly email back in 10 years ago. Right. But that's the only way to do it when you're doing that much volume. You can't be on the phone that much. There's too much going on.
So Jeff, I know I'm going to skip the next question because I know you had a question or something that you wanted to make sure you covered. So go ahead and do that.
Oh, I wanted to talk about, I do a lot of REO webinars and lunch and learns for people. And they ask me, Jeff, why do you want to help us? Well, I just like to help people generally. I'm a certified mentor with eXp Realty. I'm a coach. I do all these things to help people just because that's the way I am. I was a reserve police officer. I like to help people. So with that being said, I also have limits, just as everybody else across the country that does REO now. What happened some time ago is agents complained to National Association of Realtors, NAR, and they complained about why do all these people, like Jeff Russell and, I won't mention other names, but all these people have so many assets. Why can't we get our piece, spread the wealth? So NAR put pressure on Fannie, Freddie, and those guys and a lot of the bigger institutional banks and said, okay, you need to have caps. You need to have caps so that each agent can only have 15 max versus 150, which quite frankly, I think that's fair to some extent. But what that does is it means that asset manager with those 200 files has to reach out to 200 agents or whatever. That's really difficult for them, and I feel bad for those people. So anyway, the reason that we want to help is because I can only get so many assets. Robert can only get so many assets. Jerry can only get so many assets. So we want to help people that we know, like, and trust get more assets because we can only get so many. Also, there's mileage restrictions. They want 15 miles max or 20 miles max from your home or your office. Sometimes it's just from your office. And with that being said, that's less assets for us. So rather than let just anybody out there that doesn't know how to do it get the assets, we want to reach out to our colleagues, you guys watching this right now, and offer our help to help you get REO listings.
Yeah, because unfortunately, folks, there's very little education available. There's not one central place you go to learn all this, right? And people who aren't involved in this, and I have full disclosure on my own, I've not done an REO. Every time I have a question, I go to one of these guys, right? And every time we have agents that want to get into it, I send them to these guys because that's not my area of expertise. But these 6 guys are the most connected that I know of in the business, and I know lots of agents all over the country. They're the most knowledgeable, and they're the most respected among the asset managers because I do get to interview and talk to some of them. And so at the end of the day, it's critical that you have somebody who's willing to help. But in your own localized market, they're really not motivated to help you because there's no financial interest. You're their competition. And the question you have to ask yourself if you're going to get involved in this, who is my backstop? Who's going to be there for me to go and ask questions? And who's going to be there for me to give me advice? And what I would tell you, my own opinion, is if you don't have something like that, then you probably should avoid this. Don't you guys think? You probably is going to get aggravated, in trouble, and lose money.
And then the other thing, Bob, is like you said, you only get one shot at this. Like,
right.
Your scorecard's going to go with you. If you go at this on your own and it's a failed operation, you may not get that opportunity the next cycle, right? Because your scorecard's going to remain. So you really have to make sure that when you're approaching this, you do it well and you do it right the first time around. Outside of scorecards, there's a potential financial loss, as Jeff even mentioned. So there's definitely a lot of risk. There's a lot more reward. That's the good news. There's so much reward. There's so much opportunity. I will tell you that if you have the right people that are around you and supporting you and helping you to do this the right way, not only can it help you flourish in the amount of business that you do that are distressed properties, like those REO assets, if you really are with people who not only understand how to do it on a level of efficiency where you can grow your production outside of that, now you're really starting to create a very momentous business, something scalable. REOs can be a massive conduit to an incredible real estate business. Jeff Russell is probably one of the best examples of that.
And so just bear in mind, folks, it's a great business to be in if it's a down market. Everybody that you're seeing on that screen made more money in the down market than they do, and they're all very, very successful realtors in the good markets, but they made more money in the REO. So there's great money there. So we don't want to discourage you. We're just giving you the real honest to God facts about what's out there that nobody ever talks to you about. So Larry, Equator is one of probably the main systems that these servicers use, right?
One of them, yeah.
And there's what, 3-4 big ones?
Yeah, and then some companies have their own proprietary systems. Some just stick to email. Like, there's probably ResNet, Equator, Pyramid, and there might be 1 or 2 others. And then there's some small, just like I said, almost like homemade systems out there as well based on the size of the company that agents are required to be a part of. I can tell you, like, ResNet alone is $800 a year with no guarantee for any amount of business or anything like that. So there's cost associated with some of these. There's some that you can have a free account or a paid account. like you need the right guidance to know not to spend money unless your client is saying, hey, I need you on this platform at the end of the day, because just you being there is probably not going to be enough to drive business to you at the end of the day.
And so you're gonna have to go out and learn those systems. So that's what I said, if you don't have a lot of experience, I would recommend go learn those systems. Again, as long as you don't pay $800 to go learn something you might not ever use, but you need to know that those systems are back there. And in order to be able to feel comfortable for an asset manager to assign you an asset, they're going to want to make sure that you know how to use those systems. And so like Joseph and I were talking a couple days ago, that there's a couple of agents that we work with that they were masters at that end of the REO business. Well, guess what? You could be just a specialist as part of a team and handle that, because there's a place for that. If you don't have experience, maybe that's really where you start, right? Versus trying to go out and get these assets and doing all those things. But it's important that you take and utilize all that stuff. So Robert, let's get to the worst question. What's the hardest part of REO? Everybody always wants to, hey, the money's great, full disclosure, right? Raise your hand. You can make a lot of money. All these guys make a lot of money. But what's the hard part? There's always a downside, right?
Well, you know what? I think it's not like your traditional real estate transaction. There's so many moving parts, from the occupancy check. You've got to do all the right postings. You've got to have the right dialogue with Cash for Keys. You've got to communicate with the asset managers on a regular basis, a proactive basis. You check in the properties every week, so there's a lot of driving. Once you get the asset, you've got to check it every week. So there's so many moving parts that you add to a normal real estate transaction. That just in itself, you have to really, really understand and really get the systematic system going. Personally, as one agent, I can't handle more than, say, 10, 15 assets by myself. You need to start bringing in, like my buyer agents would be helping me with the property inspections, would be helping me with the updating the market reports. So you got to grow organically within and really teaching them how to speak the REO language. It's a totally different language than what most agents are used to.
And so I'm going to switch the order of who we went to, because Joseph and I were talking about this the other day. One of the biggest problems that an agent, or one of the biggest mistakes an agent can make, is saying, hey, I've got just this REO business, and we let everything else go, right? We don't take FSBOs or expires, right? So what we teach our agents is we have 8 different funnels you should always have going to generate listing leads, right? Because if you list, you're going to make more money. That's just the way it is. What happens is a lot of times you get so focused in the REO, you forget about the other things. Well, guess what? Especially the way that we list and sell properties, where like Robert had an open house a couple months ago, 586 people in it, right? Almost 80 people pre-approved for a loan. Well, don't you think that's going to make a difference in the cash flow that he has available to manage these REO properties? And so if you let that piece of your business fall, this piece gets a lot harder, because that cash flow is important, because you're carrying those expenses, right?
And Bob, I'll just say, like, being a really successful REO agent is a different set of skill sets, in addition to what it takes to sell real estate in general.
Yeah,
what I see sometimes happen is the agents get so addicted to the REO, if they forget how to hunt, they are going to do a couple things. One, not be able to build a scalable business. Number two, there's ebbs and flows of the market. We get that now, right? Like, there was a time when we thought REOs will be around forever because there was just so many of them. Now people are like, oh, who knows if REOs will ever come back? Markets are cyclical. You don't know how to maintain that level of being incredible in both areas, then the REOs could actually become problematic if you forget to learn or forget to remember how to hunt.
Right. The biggest thing I would tell you folks is that the important thing in real estate, so all of us have been around a long time, say I'm coming up on 30 years. There's always ebb and flow in the market, but you have to take and build your business in such a way that in a good market, you're making money. In a bad market, you're making money. So that ability to know REO, everybody goes, well, when's the best time to do it? Today, right? Get involved today so you start learning about it, because when you need it, it's too late.
And one thing to think about, and this is where I use this, and I still get calls today. I haven't sold an REO property in Phoenix, Arizona since 2009, and I still have calls because we were able to use that to build our database, build our investor database, and then we have the right CRMs and follow-up systems that whether we bought or sold the home, we were the ones that followed up with these clients over and over again, and we became, you know, their new go-to realtor at that because we provided more value, we provided more service, we provided things that nobody else could do. For instance, if an investor called on one of our properties and it was already pending, a lot of people are like, sorry, that's under escrow, and they hang up the phone because they have so much going on. We'd be like, hey, that one's under escrow. We have a list of homes that aren't on the market yet that should be coming up in the next 30 to 40 days. Would you be interested in seeing those? Great. What's your contact information, right? And now they go into our CRM and just follow the system over and over. And that's where you start creating clients for life at the end of the day.
And so that Larry brought up a good point. So now I notice more and more agents are saying, hey, do you want to get a list of off-market properties? Well, the truth is off-market properties are FSBOs and we all have access to it, right? Well, what Larry is saying is, hey, if you're doing BPOs and you're doing these things and you now know that, you know, you're probably say 2 or 3 weeks away from this house hitting the market, you actually legitimately have off-market properties. And that's a huge thing if you're doing, let's say, an open house like Robert where he gets 580 people in there and he says, hey, I do have a list of properties that are coming on the market that are bank owned. Would you want me to let you know about those? There's not a buyer on the planet that's going to say no. And so that's how you balance this between the REO and the regular portion of your business to keep them going, because one can feed the other. And the truth is, it doesn't matter good market or bad market, you can sleep well at night.
Everybody loves distressed properties.
Yeah, everybody loves it, right? So there's a magic word is bank owned or foreclosure. Take your pick, whichever one.
Yep.
You're on mute, Larry.
I was just going to say, I have yellow bank owned for sale.
Still, right.
Open house signs. And I can't tell you, I started using those on my retail open houses when I ran out of retail signs. And I had so many people just from those damn signs. And that's why Robert, probably part of the reason Robert gets so many people into his with his black and yellow signs.
So think about this, guys. So if you've been to the Lunch and Learn already, great. If not, you're going to reach out to whoever invited you or sent you this video. But make sure you get to that. So one of the things that we utilize are auctions because REO servicers understand auction. Can you imagine having a bank-owned auction open house? Right? Robert, get 1,000.
And I'm actually talking with an asset management company, actually an asset management company and a hedge fund right now. And they've already verbally committed, look, we're going to test our next property that we come up on this. And if it works, then we'll expand that. So it's a lot about how do you add value to your clients? And again, doing something that nobody else can do. And when I was trying to talk and I was on mute, I was also going to say with marketing and advertising, distressed properties, REOs, foreclosures generate on average 3 times as many leads as a traditional property as well.
And so now add that to the open houses. And again, if you've been there, you know about it. What we did, guys, we just went out and built our own auction platform because, well, REO vendors like to sell their properties by auction. So we solved that. Now we use it in the other part of our business. But at the end of the day, imagine having auction signifies deal, right? Bank-owned foreclosure signifies deal. What's the number one thing every buyer on the planet wants?
Deal.
And so that's why you can't ignore the other side of your business, because all that money's coming in, all that cash flow is coming in, and you're going to need that, which is, Jerry, I'm going to bring it to you because you probably have a better idea of how much money flows in and out. You did it as a company, but you know, we talked about some of the individual repairs. Like, how much should somebody have, say, an excess cash, if you will, or excess cash flow to be able to float those expenses?
Well, I like to quote what Jeff said. On average, it's at least a $3,000 per property revolving. But I've seen properties out there, deed trash, repairs, cash for keys. I mean, you can be floating $50, $60, $70, $75,000 rotating in your float, right? And it's just what it is to be an REO, what it is to be an REO agent. And that's why we take this and it's leverage, leverage, leverage. And if I ask everybody here this question, we are excited about when the REOs come, because the ability to leverage and all the marketing that we can do to get traditional business on top of it is absolutely going to be amazing.
And it'll be critical to your cash flow.
And it will be critical to your cash flow.
And so listen, if you're watching this go, whoa, that whole idea of cash flow scares me, you need to reach out. If you haven't been to the Lunch and Learn, we show you how our brokerage subsidizes that cash flow for us so that we're not laying in bed worrying about that stuff at night. And it's way better to have that money come out of somebody else's pocket instead of yours. So if you haven't been to a Lunch and Learn, like I said, reach out to whoever sent you this video and make sure that you do that because, well, you don't have to worry about the cash flow either. That should be everybody's number one concern, right? Number two would be who's going to be there to help coach, guide, mentor me, answer questions. Those are really the big two.
Yep.
And so, the question that you're going to have to ask yourself is your brokerage able to help you with this? And if you're serious about it, like James, you and I met at one of our Facebook classes and you worked for a company that was full of REO. You didn't just make that move lightly, did you?
No.
And
no.
You had to make sure that we were qualified and we could do the E&Os and we had all those things in place. I would encourage people because James, here's how it worked for James. James came to a class. He went back to Southern California and talked with Joseph and Jerry and said, what do you guys think about this? Does this look like something that would help us be able to build this huge team and this whole set of REO expertise? And how do we leverage that to help other agents and build something great for ourselves? Right? Because you didn't make that decision like that, did you?
No, absolutely. I had to look at all angles for sure.
And then Jerry broke the books down and Joseph looked at his end and, you're going to have to do that legwork, if you will. And you're going to need to, again, on the Lunch and Learn, we tell you the number one thing you better have is some coaches and mentors that you can go to and ask questions because there isn't anybody for that. And if you don't have that, you're going to have to get it. However you do it, it's going to be up to you. I know that I can tell you personally, these 6 guys on the screen know more about REO and their little pinkies than the average agent does, even the average REO agent does in their whole experience. These guys manage portfolios of tens of thousands of properties at a time. So I'm going to just go around one more time and Larry, just give a final thought. What would, whatever it is that you want to say, whether it's good, bad, or different, what your advice for people is, and I'm just going to do the same for everybody.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're doing here is a lot of the team members and people that we're bringing on either ran asset management companies, transitioned out of the asset management side. So we're strategically building this team and we need more qualified individuals that are coachable, trainable, that kind of want to make this a part of their business so that they're a little bit more diversified and they're hedging the market at the end of the day.
And to give you full disclosure, 2 of the agents on Larry's team, one of them is the former director of Freddie Mac REO, and another one is an asset manager for another company. That's the kind of reputation these guys have in our business. So, Robert, how about you?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to start off with this thought in mind. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. We have a list of REO and asset management companies, BPO companies. They're all different. I've been updating my list these past few weeks. Just go in there and methodically go through them, answer the questions, but it's very difficult to do it on your own. So I think that they should just definitely reach out to us and we can walk through it.
Perfect. Jerry, give him the broker side.
Having the ability to not make a mistake within the first hour to 48 hours of getting an asset is crucial, right? And being able to approach a door on a brand new asset, not knowing what's behind it and knowing what to say is crucial, right?
So
there you go.
That's why, Jerry was the broker that people went and interviewed. You need to go interview your broker. James and Joseph got a different perspective because, hey, they've been out there doing the BPOs, doing the REO, doing the open houses, doing all this stuff for years now in Southern California. So, one of the challenges, obviously I live in Arizona, one of the challenges of working in California is the traffic is so bad. Man, if you get 6 BPOs in a day, how do you do that?
Yeah, that's a tough one sometimes. It's definitely a challenge. One of the things though that, to wrap as you were talking is I think leverage is extremely important in whatever we're doing is whether it's REO or traditional, but leveraging that business to do more business. Everything is synergistic. And, again, with making the transition to where I'm at currently, that was leverage for me as well. So I think that's a big aspect in all of this, to take advantage of that.
And just as another disclosure, guys, each of these guys donate a couple hours a week of their time in our virtual office to just be there to answer questions for any agent anywhere about anything that they want. So imagine there's 12 hours a week for our agents right now that have some of the best REO minds in the business that they can go pick their brain. So Joseph, go ahead.
And what I would say is some of these agents that you guys see on here, I still go to for coaching hours. When I'm not holding my own hours to help other agents, I'm in there trying to learn from some of these folks constantly. And what I would say is simply this: there are ways to build a real estate business that transcend markets. Okay, they're beyond what the market is doing, because your business is tooled to kind of have an ebb and flow based on what's happening. There are absolutely ways to do that. For a lot of agents, that seems foreign. Like, what do you mean when the market's not good, things aren't good? That doesn't have to be the case. Implementing the REO side of the business into your overall real estate business is one way to do that. But that's not the only way. There are other ways in which we do that all the time. This is one of the main ones, though. So there are ways to make sure that your real estate business doesn't get hit when the real estate market gets hit. There are ways to still thrive in those markets, but it's going to take you being with the right people, learning the right strategies, implementing the right processes to your business. So now your real estate business is scalable and it operates above whatever the market is doing. You just have to make those adaptations, be ahead of those curves, so you're riding a positive wave of change, not getting beaten up by one. But these things are absolutely possible. These guys are all proof of it.
Yeah.
And I can vouch for Joseph on that. He comes into my office every time I'm in there. He tells me how much he wants to be like me. Like, man, you're so pretty. Like, it's overwhelming. I'm like, stop it, Joseph, stop it. Come on.
I may shave my head.
But by the way, we have a lot of fun doing it too. So, so Jeff, we'll leave the final words of wisdom to you.
Okay. So for me, it's really aligning yourself with the right mentor. I know I've said that before, or group, but that's really what's gotten me to where I am today. If it weren't for a few key individuals in my REO space of my business, I would not be here today. I probably would not even still be here as a realtor today, because when I started my real estate career, I started in 2008, right? The worst time to start a real estate career. So it's about aligning yourself with the right people, knowing, and then what helped me with that is knowing how to systemize my business so that I could handle, 10, 20, 30, 40. I mean, there's a certain scale of economy when you get to a certain point in REO as far as number of assets. And like, I think I heard one of you say that, you can only, I think it was Robert, can only handle about 15 or 20 listings. And then it's you've got to hire people. So you've got to hire W-2 people. You've got to hire realtors. And Bob will probably talk about this before we get off, but hiring realtors is a difficult task. It really is. But, fortunately, where I'm at in the space of EXP, it makes it really very simple for me to hire good business-minded realtors, because when they see the EXP model, a good business-minded person is going to see the value in EXP. Forget the REO, forget the coaching, forget any of that, just as a platform to grow your own business in. So, it's right now is the time to align yourself. People used to ask me, Jeff, how did you get into the REO business in 2009, 2010, when I was carrying over 200 assets? And I just looked at them. I said, I was in the right place, right time. I saw it coming. I said, I saw REO like Wayne Gretzky sees the hockey puck. I wasn't watching where it was going. I could see where it was going to be, and that's where I went and stood and learned about it. I did 700 BPOs a year for about a year, and got well known out there, and joined the right groups, went to the right REO conferences with the right people. That's where I met Robert at an REO Mat conference. And those are the things you need to do. So again, all goes back to aligning yourself with the right people in a group, and that's what's going to get you successful in any business.
Jeff, like right now, what's the mix of your business for REO and just say traditional?
Right now, I would say it's about 20 to 30% REO, 20% REO. I've got about 15 REO properties right now. They're not all listed. They're in different areas of the REO phase. You know, I've got one that's almost $8 million in the Palisades. I've been trying to list for some time now. And I've got, you know, I got one in San Bernardino I just closed on. It was 120,000.
Right.
So.
And to me, Jeff is kind of the model of the way you build the business, where he still has his regular real estate business. And so 20, 25%, whatever the number is right now is REO. But I'm going to guess, and I think we all can agree by, say, December of this year, that might be much closer to 50-50, 40-60, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's coming. It absolutely is coming, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know that it'll be 208 model, but it's certainly going to increase. And so what Jeff has built is he's got the ability to balance that business out when he needs to. So, well, guys, thanks so much for being here. Folks, I hope you got a lot out of this. We wanted to be upfront and tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly about REO. You know, for me, I can tell you these are the smartest guys that I know in it. So, guys, I appreciate you being here. You know that I appreciate love working with you guys every day. We do have a blast. We are serious. We all do really well at what we do, but we have a lot of fun. And I would say we're more family than, you know, friends. We're just not people we know across the country. So, so thanks for being here, guys. Folks,
thank you, Bob.
Get with whoever invited you or sent you this video. You know, have a chat with them about how we could work together, and we'll go from there. So, thanks so much for being here, guys.
Bye, guys.
You guys.